create wealth, but perhaps, as Peter Schif so nicely pointed out, just the illusion or appearance of wealth?
Well, yes, it's the redistribution of wealth, but I think we're too stupid. I mean, it's not a coincidence that we have a public school system that seeks to stamp out dissent, stamp out independent thinking, creative thinking. And so, most Americans continue to buy the government line that the Federal Reserve is just a name on the bill in your pocket and otherwise don't know anything about it, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. But in fact, thanks to Ron Paul recently, Peter Schif and others, Americans are beginning to wake up to the fact that this institution is ripping us off. And far from being boring, the rip-off business is extremely interesting. We're being mugged by Mr. Cohn, by Mr. Bernanke, and the rest of those guys. And I want to mention that Ron Paul has a book coming out this summer in August called End the Fed, and that's exactly what we need to do.
The problem is the politicians don't want to end the Fed because the Fed subsidizes all their big spending, all the stimulus plans, all the grandiose ideas that they have. They're looking at the Fed to finance them.
And the Fed is literally the lender of last resort. They know that they can get away with almost any kind of financial shenanigan they want because the Fed will find the appearance of money for them.
Sure, and there should have been some kind of independence. That was the whole idea, that the Fed would act independently of the government, and the Fed would lean on the government and not monetize government debt. Would be a check, because that's one of the reasons why Congress doesn't have the printing press, why the Fed does, to have some independence. The other reason might have been that Congress has no constitutional authority to do it. So they vested it in a private enterprise. But I guess today, where they have absolutely no respect for the Constitution whatsoever, they can certainly assign that function to the government. I hope they don't, though.
Right. When you run for Congress, which you've just announced that you're going to do, are the people in your district, are the grassroots average folks aware of the type of things that we're talking about, the pernicious nature of the Fed, its incredible secrecy, its ability to alter financial relationships by adding zeros to a book account, its efforts to create the appearance of wealth out of thin air? Do they understand, and are they fearful of that type of thing?
I don't think they understand the details and the mechanics of everything, and to be honest, I don't understand everything, which is why I'm excited about 1207 and the momentum that's gaining to audit the Fed. But people know that something's wrong. They know they're being taken advantage of, and they know that we need to do something about it. And this is what is really exciting to me about this process with 1207 and the work to audit the Fed. It's not that we're going to get numbers on paper and we're going to see the shenanigans, because we know that they're doing something wrong because they're trying so hard to hide it. But when we pull the curtain back,
right,
and show to the American people we have a fiat currency system that's not backed by anything. They add zeros, and they're not creating wealth, they're creating power. They're creating the power to manipulate wealth and redistribute resources for their own benefit. Then we're going to demand that something change. And one of the things there's going to be a demand for is honest money, like the American Open Currency Standard. Real, backed by precious metals, actual precious metal coins, right, things that have real value, as opposed to the paper money that we have granted our government the authority through the Federal Reserve to create, to manipulate and take advantage of.
We are chatting with Lew Rockwell from the Von Mises Institute, Adam Kokesh, who's running for Congress in New Mexico, Shelley Roche, who deals with all of our digital issues, and Peter Schif, who's the president of Euro-Pacific Capital. Lew, you know that I read everything you write, and you know that I spend every Sunday afternoon, it's my favorite part of the week, reading LewRockwell.com and everything that's been in it since the previous Sunday. But your piece headed to National Socialism is absolutely terrifying. You basically took a book written in 1939, before World War II was even started, and described what Hitler had done in Germany. It is shockingly similar to what we have seen happen in this country in the past year and a half. Tell us a little about it, Lew.
Well, Judge, I think sometimes this is why there's been so little scholarship on the actual, in English anyway, on the actual functioning of the Nazi economy, because it has too many eerie similarities, as you point out. So this is a great book written by a man called Günter Riemann, and it's called The Vampire Economy, one of the great book titles ever. And he examines what the Nazis were doing, what National Socialism was in Germany. And, yeah, you're exactly right. It's very eerie. In fact, I would argue that in America, ever since really FDR and the New Deal, we've had a soft form of fascism in this country. That is a government, big business partnership, big labor partnership, big bank partnership against the rest of us. And that's getting worse and worse, and boy, it sure is stepping it up under Mr. Obama.
Getting back to 1207, getting back to the efforts to audit the Fed, Shelley, what can people do? What's going on in the movement? The two of you must be in your 20s. Why are so many young people excited about the prospect of liberty, unlike anything I've seen in my life since Barry Goldwater got the Republican nomination in 1964? Shelley?
Well, all of the issues we've talked about today, the socialism, auditing the Fed, it all comes back to doing outreach and activism and taking action. And so a couple of the things that are happening in the grassroots, we're kind of taking a two-pronged approach. And one thing is keeping up the pressure on Congress. We all know that their priorities aren't what they should be. And so you'd be surprised at the number of emails and comments that I get from people who call their representatives every day, literally. And they call other people's representatives, and we kind of all collaborate online to help each other out and to really keep the pressure up. The other thing that I think is even more important is doing outreach so that we can grow our base and tying into other groups. For example, there's a group of, it's called Small Businesses Against Big Government on Facebook. They have about 7,000 members. The Federal Reserve is going to be something that affects them directly. So I've been talking to the guy that founded the group, and now, he's talking about the Federal Reserve to 7,000 business owners. So it's just getting out, finding ways to reach out to different kinds of groups that might not inherently be interested in the cause of liberty and pulling them in.
Is the Republican Party a bona fide vessel toward getting ideas of liberty into the government? Or is it just as bad as the Democratic Party? Stated differently, are you going to run against Chris Dodd in Connecticut? Because I must get these emails every day when you're on Freedom Watch.
Well, first of all, I don't think the Republicans are as bad as the Democrats. But the problem is, and my problem with the Republicans and why they've created so much trouble for the party and for what they supposedly stand for, is we elect them to be Republicans, but then they govern like Democrats. And the problem is they create a lot of problems under the name of free market capitalism, and then it gives it a bad name. And I was very critical of the Bush administration for 8 years based on the policies they were pursuing, because I knew this was going to end in tears and that free market capitalism was going to take the blame for what was inherently a big government-created problem. And so what I see my mission would be about going into the Republican Party is to try to change the leadership in the Republican Party and make it actually govern for what a lot of the people in the Republican Party are voting for. I mean, there are a number of people who vote Republican who believe in limited government, sound money, that want to shrink government, but their party doesn't deliver it. And they end up going to the voting booth, and they vote just because they want to vote for the lesser of two evils. And
will people in Connecticut be able to vote for a guy named Schif in 2010?
Well, here's the status of that campaign. Right? What I did recently is I set up an exploratory committee. And I basically decided that I am willing to run. I've done the research, and I've made a decision that I will run, provided there's enough support for that run. This is going to be an expensive Senate race. It could be the most expensive Senate race.
It would be the most watched Senate race in the country.
That too. But Foley is going to get a lot of money, and the Republicans are going to get a lot of money vying for the chance of challenging him. So I'm going to need a lot of money. I mean, I can't fund it all myself. I'm not Steve Forbes. I'm not Ross Perot. I can put some money in, but I'm not going to blow $20+ million to get a job that, what does it pay, $200,000? So what I'm saying is, if the public wants me to run, then I'll run. And the way I'm going to judge that support is based on willingness of people to donate to my campaign. And I can extrapolate based on my fundraising over the next few weeks and see what I can do over the year. So if people want me to run, you want to go to my website for the exploratory committee, which is schif4senate.com, and donate to that campaign. Donate online, send me a check. Either way, but the more people who donate and the more money I raise, that's going to determine whether I run. Because if people won't support this campaign who believe in me, how am I going to get people who don't to vote for me?
Exactly.
May I ask how old are you, sir?
I'm too old.
He's a young man.
Well, I'm 27, and this came up earlier, but you have a lot of support from people who are my age and my generation who are getting involved in a powerful way in politics now for the first time. Because we're just old enough, and it's what makes my generation so much different from everyone previous is that we grew up with the internet. We grew up with the truth button, one click away right there, and it's hardwired in somehow. And we haven't seen yet how this is going to be a game changer.
What's very
in politics.
interesting, for my appeal to young people is my marketing efforts, by and large, were concentrated on getting clients from my brokerage firm. So I would go out and go on financial television shows and